Yes, maybe.
Uh, let me see if I get a notification. Once I get, yes, we should be good to go.
All right. Hello, good people. Hello, and welcome to Letters to Madam. This is number, I don't know, episode, but we are happy that we are still yet here and we are here with you. So thank you for joining. Hello, Titus Glenn. Hello, Mr. Kara Hyde. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. How are
Oh,
you?
I'm amazing. So I'm gonna really quickly, I'm gonna jump right in with a pre-thought and then we'll go right into the letter. And I want to know what you guys think about the thought of um this particular thought breeds dysfunction, right? And we may never think about it all the time, but it's something we should think about. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of when you go to therapy, you may get more tools than you had before, and you may understand some dynamics that you never thought about before. And so, understanding that standards equal resentment, standards equal resentment.
Okay.
Uh, it's a breeding place for resentment. When you have a standard, that standard can be let down, broken down, but it also breeds resentment. Why? Because somebody may not, people are flawed. So they may be at a point in one place and in a different point at another place, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a point that I've learned and I wanted to share. I want to know what you guys think about that thought. Standards, I mean, not standards. Yeah, when you set a standard for someone else, that can breed resentment. Your thoughts?
Go ahead, Takara. Or you want me to go?
Yeah, I was going to say you go first, Titus.
This really hits home with me because I've often had conversation with a friend of mine, and we talk about expectations and how expectations is really the breeding ground for. Well, in those conversations, they think that expectation is the breeding ground for failure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because it's you giving people expectations without discussing it with them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hold somebody to an accountability level that they didn't even know they were being held to. And I think oftentimes we have an expectation, even what friendship should look like. Even if it's like, oh, you got my text message and you didn't call me back. Well, how do you know? And we've had this, Madam Secretary, to where I text you and I had to discover, oh, she's not a texter. So let me give her some grace. Let me not, be like, I text you. If anything, I'm learning to call and say, read your text message. You know what I'm saying? And so if I would have continued to have this expectation of you to do things that I would normally do, then I'm not allowing you to be you. And I think this also correlates to allowing people to be them and then you choosing if you accept who they are. And I
Exactly.
think it makes it easier when we're trying to figure out who's a friend, who's a foe, who's supposed to be a romantic partner, who's supposed to be whatever that is. You allow people to be who they are in those spaces, and then you choose, you know what I'm saying, through conversations with yourself and with them where you should put them.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That's
my 2 cents.
that's amazing.
Wow, I guess I would have to agree with that statement too. Also, what was popping up in my head was falsehood, falsifying who you want that person to be. Not being honest about who you're wanting that person to be for you. Not necessarily accepting them where they are, but what you want them to be for you. Do I want Tam, oh, well, sorry, do I want Madam Secretary to be, this type of friend, or am I expecting her to be this type of friend? I think having that conversation about what your expectations is going to look like in a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a fluid relationship or whatever type of the relationship it is. I think the honesty with yourself has to happen first. What you're seeking out of that type of relationship. And the second thing is resentment. Good God Almighty. Resentment to me happens when you're not being honest about what you're expecting out of that person. And I don't think the resentment of just being honest is enough. Because when you're talking about resentment, you're talking about resentment from not even speaking your mind, or not saying what you really feel, or hiding behind not wanting to hurt the person's feelings, and you want to spare the person's feelings when you really need to find the right words or the right road to have that decent conversation when you're talking about resentment. And I feel like resentment is such a huge word. You can go so many different directions with that phrase. It kind of scares me a little bit to even talk about it, because again, when you're talking about resentment, you're opening up yourself to being vulnerable. Yeah. It's a whole place, and it's a real thing. So I think resentment is also, yeah, I think it's a tie to a whole bunch of different things and feelings, and it's a very real feeling. It's a real relevant place to be, and I think a lot of people try to avoid having those conversations, but you can't.
For sure. And then I'll piggyback off of one thing that Titus said and one thing that you said. I'll start with resentment, since that's where we are. One of the bigger things we have to understand is, are they who they are, or do I want them to be who I want them to be when they're around me, right? Because you say, oh, people say, oh, I don't want to be around fake people, but you're really asking me to be fake, choosing, asking me to be something that I'm not, unless I'm around you. But the thing about it is, am I being fake, or am I making you comfortable? Am I making you comfortable while I'm around you? Because the person that I actually am may be who I am. So then we'll go to piggyback off of what Titus said. Statistically saying, people change every 5 years. So if you knew me for 10 years, you literally knew me one way for 5 years. I may have still had some of the same traits for that next 5 years, but there's some things that may have changed. Maybe my mindset, maybe my body, maybe my image, maybe my own thought of self, right? Because every 5 years, statistically, that means that it is scientifically proven that people change every 5 years. So I may like what is that one sauce people can't really say, Richardson sauce, horse, whatever it's called. I may like that sauce, right, with my egg rolls. 5 years from now, it is repulsing for me to smell it. You know what I'm saying? And understanding that, you know what, and that goes back to the resentment and really having standards. I'm not saying not having standards on yourself, but you even need to give yourself some grace, because having standards on someone else is saying that if you change in those 5 years, I won't be able to deal with the new you. So do you throw them away because you can't deal with them? Or do you understand they're changing and that's okay? So now let me adapt to the new person that they are. Titus said something very, very amazing when he spoke of our friendship, and he said, Tam's not a texter. It's not that I don't want to text. I think because I'm learning myself, it gives me anxiety sometimes to go back and respond, because I'm like, okay, what do I say? Like, I'm forever changing the text message, like erasing it, like, because you want to make sure, depending on who you're talking to, you say it in a way that they can hear you correctly. And you may be talking to different people. And so that means you're changing your verbiage in each conversation. So for me, it's work. It becomes a task. But what I've known is, if this is what my friend is, for the next 5 years, I need to figure out how can I make it, when they do tell me, hey, I text you, go read your text message, I try to make it apparent to make sure that I'm kind of by the phone so that I stay present in the moment, because we can be present and very absent. You can be present in a moment and be very absent, and that leaves that person to believe that you are not paying attention to me. That means I'm not that important to you. If he called me and say, hey, look at your text message, and I walked away from the phone, that next call may not be as nice. Or what if it was an emergency? You know what I'm saying? And they just couldn't talk about it and they needed you to, be present in the moment. So that's just some things to think about. And the critical thought for this week is standards, other people's standards that you put on them, it breeds resentment that you hide in your heart. And some things, and I'll say this, hiding your heart or within your body, some of these things are cancerous and it's tearing down your inside where you think, I'm okay, I'm letting it roll off my back, and it's going to a sensitive spot within your heart or within your body that's literally eating away from the inside of you, eating you away from the inside out. So let's try to be healthy. Let's get into the letter. Today's letter was, I guess it hits home, and hopefully we all can relate. If not, then maybe one day. The letter says, Dear Madam, I have recently started therapy and I feel like it's really working. But one thing I realized that I've learned more about my family dynamics than I ever have before. I want to ask if there's something that you would do, if this is something that you would do, and if so, how would you go about offering therapy to some of your family members that you think could really benefit? That's a pet. That is a full letter.
Can you read it one more time?
Yes. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll go slower this time. Okay. Dear Madam, I have recently started therapy and I feel like it's really working for me. But one thing I realized about therapy is that it really talks about the dynamics in my family. Have you ever been to therapy? And if so, how would you go about offering therapy to some of your family members that you think could really benefit? Okay.
Takara, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yes, I have been to therapy and absolutely love it and recommend it for anybody, for children, for adults, women, men. I recommend you go especially if you have trauma, any type of trauma issues. It's a process. Let me take it one step at a time because I think it was two questions in one. The first one, go for you. Don't go for anybody else. Go for you. Go get the help that you directly need for you. Don't worry about what your family members may say, how they may feel. And the way I see it is, I see it as a medical necessity. You don't tell everybody your medical business. So you don't have to tell people that you're going to therapy if you're not comfortable telling people that you're going to therapy. You can keep it to yourself until you're ready to say those big words. Hey, I'm in therapy. And you never know. It might be that eye-opening moment to where somebody said, hey, I wanted to go to therapy too. Can you recommend me to somebody? So you just never know who you are helping. The second part to this, how to recommend a family member to go. Again, that goes back to what I just stated. When you're ready to speak openly about what's going on with you per se, as far as you going to counseling or going to therapy, then those conversations become a lot easier to have with your family members. And then they may even ask you about some of the sessions, because I think it's a big fear of the what is, what's going on inside the sessions. You not necessarily have to speak on it, but I will definitely say, hey, I get to do this. I'll give you a little peek at my stuff. Man, I threw rocks. I had batting cage. I had a dollhouse. I had sand where I had to play with sand because my thing is I'm a touchy-feely person. So the anger had to be channeled somewhere. So I threw darts. I went to this, it's so fun, y'all. I went to this this place where you get to throw, what is it, the axis? So I threw axis. I did a lot of different things to channel in that energy, that negative energy, to channel it out, to get it out. So I said that to say, when you're comfortable with having those type of conversations, then it become a lot easier to have it with your family members and your friends. And I'm gonna land my plane and park my bus.
Yeah. Okay. Titus Glenn, we can't hear you, but I know you
We're
said something.
taking 2 trips. We're parking a bus and landing a.
And landing.
Listen, it's a lot. This one is really a lot to unpack. You know, I think Takara said a lot already. Like, your business is your business, especially when it comes to medical. But since it relates to, should you share? Should you tell someone? What should you encourage? I think you really have to go with how are you feeling about it. Ultimately, like, you have to decide, is this family member in a position to hear me? Or will they take it as a critical, as I'm trying to judge them, or do they even understand where they are mentally? I have a family right now that I have encouraged to go to therapy, and I've said it in a loving manner. I say, have you considered this? Like, you know, especially when it comes to grief, I feel like we grieve, but we grieve on our own. Or a lot of times we grieve on our own, and we don't really go through the stages with help. And I think therapy is that medical, like Takara said, help for someone to actually go in and be aware where you are. And they've done the research to help you, give you the tools. And I think a lot of times people are unaware of the benefit, and they only look at the what is the, I don't know what word to say.
It's the negative connotation.
Yeah, they collect. You're right. They look at therapy as, I'm crazy. But if you really look at it that way, everybody has a little bit of crazy in them, right? But we never want to deal with the crazy, which is why we continue to go with the cycles. And I would encourage that person, whoever wrote the letter, to say, hey, I'm going to sit with this, and if that person is ready, if I feel as though it's time to share, then I'm going to share from the aspect of love, and just share in the sense of, hey, have you considered this? Because I've done it, and this is how it's helping me cope with this. And then once you release that information out of love, you still have to let them decide if they're going to do it or not. So I would say release the information if you feel necessary, but then take your emotions out of it if they choose not to.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to the point of when you start exercising, most people, when they begin to exercise or change their eating habits, one of the first things you do is, if you're speaking with a friend, you share. So you usually share, and then you say, and most of the time, this is something that you have to be mindful, and maybe even listen yourself. You'd be like, and you should, you're so excited about the new change and the change of behavior that you want to share, whether it's your New Year's resolution, or going to church, or changing your eating habits, or even a particular regimen that works for you, right? I found something that works. I want you to try it too, So I think in the aspect of when you went to therapy, or you go to therapy, and you learn more about your family dynamics, is because you were a real part of that family. And who you are today, and who you show up as today, you have to go back and find out. You won't be able to take a tree away from its home without getting the roots. If you pick up a tree, the roots are coming too. And so a lot of times we are so grounded within our family dynamics, with hurt, pain, growth, because there's some growth, there's some healing, there's some good things that happen too, with the good and the bad. And I think, as you pick up your roots, the reason why you go straight to the family tie is because you were tied directly to those roots, and or they're deeper, right? You can build friendships and they may be branches, but when you go down to the family dynamic, they are roots. And so as you begin to pick up or peel back some layers, you're reminded of some things or open or insight. I think a very good word for this particular message is insight. You had a dynamic of this when you started to discuss whatever it was, and then you left with this, and now you can see from a bigger, standpoint, a wider view, and maybe your story changed. Maybe what you thought was happening, you got to hear it or see it or listen to it from a different dynamic where someone says it back to you. And then you're able to put yourself in a place of, oh, wow, I didn't even see that going on because I was literally living it. I didn't see what that person was dealing with or that person was dealing with. I only seen how it affected me. So I believe, I'm going to say this. If this is working for you, stay in it. And I'll say this, stick with it all the way to the end so then you can be a true reflection of it working. And then if someone says, hey, I see you a lot more happier, I see you, problem solving a lot, then that's an opportunity and an open door for you to discuss, hey, this is what I've tried, this is what I did. And that person will be open to hear you because they want to know what is the change and how did it happen? And that gives you, that's a gateway or a bridge to be able to cross it and say, hey, you know what? This may be a safe place because you asked me. And then you're able to tell them that you made it all the way to the end and they go through this thing, this journey, therapy, team building. There's so many different group therapy. There's so many forms of therapy, grief therapy, like Titus said. I believe if you take care of your health, as far as your outside of your body, if you break a leg, you take care of that. If it's sugar diabetes, you take care of that. If you're hungry, you go eat. But not a lot of times do we really exercise the one thing that really fuels everything, the mind. That's one thing that may take a backseat to a lot of different things is the mental. And if you can see how fragile the mind is, it's protected by a skull, but the inside is very fragile. Let's take a look and see how can we better protect our mind for long health. If no one else has anything else to say, are we good?
I'm good.
I think I'm good. I only wanted to say one more little short thing is that it took me a while to open up to my mom about me going to therapy, just because I knew she had some reservations about therapy. But at the end, I was like, it's not for you, it's for me. I had to go to therapy to be a whole person, to learn how to be a whole person in the presence of other people. Because I'm a believer that hurt people. And when you're hurting somebody or if you're not seeing that you're getting the attention of a hurt person, that's like you just said, if I'm not being cared for mentally, that's erupting my household. I'm not a whole person for my son, for my kids, for my husband, for my spouse, and for me. I'm not a whole person. So, my final thought is, don't do it for somebody else, because you're missing out on tools, you're missing out on insight, you're missing out on personal discovery. Oh, that is awesome. Like, I love being able to find the new Takara and being able to find my voice and being able to speak my mind and speak my personal truth and be happy and satisfied with not being okay with my personal truth. That self-discovery for me was everything. And it was mine. And I possessed it and I owned it. And I love the fact that I was able to say that I found that in therapy. I found this going to not one therapist, but I had two of them jokers. So I'm a firm believer that it is very, very, very needed. And when used correctly, it can be a life-changing experience. So that's all for me.
That's good. And our final thought of today was very good. Thank you guys for stopping by. Please like, comment, and subscribe, share. We want to be beneficial to everybody. And I'll say this last thing, on the other side of fear is success. In anything that you do, even, it may be afraid. You may be afraid to go and walk and turn on the light. But after you turn on the light, you'll see that it's not so scary after all. So hopefully that benefited somebody. That's not good verbiage. I hope it benefit someone here today. And we want to continue to do this. Thank you, team, so much for supporting me and being here on tonight, because I know there's somebody attached to your mic. And in the words of Tabitha Brown, if you're having a good day, that is amazing. But if you're not, just don't go messing up nobody else's. And we out.